no matter what your political persuasion, no matter what your affiliations are, that as Montanans, we have more in common that separates us. And if we can get people around a table, landowners, outfitters, sportsmen, conservationists, if they come in good faith and we focus on the things we have in common, we can get a lot done.
All right, Governor. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's good to be with you, Josh.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was just like a month or so ago, I think you came through here for a tour.
So impressed with you, what you guys are doing here. I mean, from a dream that was born out of the pandemic to a multi-million-dollar corporation producing some awesome blades.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable. I mean, we're still here on my home property, so we still have a long ways to go. I mean, it's weird. A lot of people think we're so huge, but we're also still like so far away from where we're trying to head.
Yeah. How cool is it? You're producing an awesome product.
Yeah.
You're dog friendly and hunter friendly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's amazing. And it's really the American people, Montanans, the American people, that have the American made has resonated.
Yeah.
And manufacturing in America again.
And I think it's awesome that how you've leveraged the Montana brand, which is really now a global brand.
It is.
And it's associated with freedom. It's associated with free enterprise and outdoor adventure.
Yeah.
And it all comes together in one place.
Hardworking people, blue-collar people, honest, help your neighbor, just all the core values that you want your country to be. And that's, for years I would go to knife shows. For the last 30 years, I'd be in Atlanta at a blade show, or I'd be in New York City, or I'd be wherever, and people would be standing at my table, and they would notice on my business cards I was from Montana, and they'd be like, "You're from Montana?" I was like, "Yeah." And then all of a sudden it was like, "Oh, I'm dreaming of going there. What's it like there?" And Montana's so aspirational, and then of course that's even blown up more with shows like Yellowstone and whatnot. But between the beauty of the state and then just the core values of the people here, it's an amazing place.
And people have been coming in, and we've been recently had some real success recruiting businesses here.
Yeah.
And people have said, well, how what'd you give these people to get them to move here? We just had a large ammunition manufacturer move to Glendive. They're going to invest $125 million there and build primers, which we desperately need in this country. But I was really clear. I said, what we're offering these companies is a quality of life that can't be matched for their employees.
Right.
And a work ethic that won't quit.
Right.
And if they want a handout, they should go to Massachusetts.
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's interesting, with all these people coming here, and this is kind of my thing I've argued with people here is like, people are coming no matter what. People are going to move to our state. So we need to have good, high-paying jobs. We need to have jobs for these people. And if there was a Montana knife company in every small county in America, this whole entire nation would be better. We're never going to maybe be the biggest company in America, but solid, we have high paying jobs. We offer benefits. We take care of our people. It's a real family culture here. And I found it, I think, easier for us to grow our business because we're in Montana, because of the type of people we hire. I have a bunch of young kids downstairs. You've seen them. Mm-hmm. A bunch of young kids, but high value, high ethic people, which is Montana.
And it's the pride in the work.
Yeah.
I mean, you produce blades like you're producing, and you can feel good when you go home at night.
Yeah.
I had my daughter to work when she was like 8, and I was in the software business, and she shadowed me around for the day, and I went home, and my wife said, "Rachel, what'd you think of Daddy's work?" And she goes, "Well, he doesn't work. He just talks on the phone."
Yeah. So speaking of talking, you've met a ton of people. What has it been like to be governor of Montana in these last number of years?
I have to say it's the greatest honor of my life. I'm an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. I've started 5 different businesses, mostly in technology, but now I get to serve the state I love. So my wife and I do it together. We started 5 businesses together. We raised 4 kids together, and now we're serving the state together.
Yeah,
and I love it. I did a couple things. I promised the people of Montana I do. I replaced the leadership at all the state agencies. We introduced a new concept we have good workers at the state, but nobody had ever told them what their job was. How do you score points? It's like we put 22 people on the football field and didn't tell them where the end zone was.
Right.
And it's really hard. So they all know now, and they work their tails off. We've changed the culture so that we have adopted more of a customer service attitude, because government, mostly gets in the way of small business people. Our job is to remove the barriers. This is why we've put so much energy into peeling red tape back, reducing taxes, making it more business friendly, because it's government doesn't create jobs. They're created by places like Montana Knife Company and other entrepreneurial businesses. And our job in government is mostly to get out of the way. And we can use the convening power of my office to bring people together to solve problems. We've done that for behavioral health. We've done it to increase teacher pay and some other things that we needed to work on. But we've also used it for business attraction.
Yeah.
And it's not hard. We go to places that don't embrace freedom the way we do.
Right.
And it's not hard. We just knock on the door and say, hey, you want to move back to America?
Yeah.
And that's Montana. And this is going to be a sanctuary for freedom and free enterprise.
Yeah.
And then you can succeed based on your efforts.
Right.
I think nobody gets up in the morning and says, what can government do for me today? Right? It's like, how do I get government out of the way?
Yeah. And as a business owner, I mean, I still believed when I was going to start this business, the American dream is still alive. And now it's not easy. Nobody's going to hand it to you. I mean, I was building this before and after work as a day job as a lineman for Northwestern Energy. I mean, you have to get up earlier and you have to go to bed later and you have to work your weekends. You might not go to a Grizz game, or you might not go to the bar. Like, when you want to achieve the American dream, at some point you have to sacrifice. And we've done that. But I've also seen, as I've started to grow and we started to have success, the impact that, and not so much with us was regulations, but like taxes, right? You hear people talk about corporations and evil corporations, and it's like, man, I'll tell you what, first of all, not all corporations are created equal. I mean, a corporation can be a husband and a wife, or it can be Amazon. So to include everybody in the same thing, and second of all, like last year when we went to pay taxes and you send out over $1 million in taxes for a 2-year-old business, it just stops you in your tracks. And I understand taxes also are critical. There are certain taxes and certain things we have to be good to give back to our community and make sure that we have good roads and we have good bridges and all the some of the services and stuff, fire and police and all that. But there's the waste that you see, especially at the federal government, and I'll commend Montana. It seems like Montana, especially lately, has really trimmed it down to a much more efficient form of government. Because when you see what's happened federally, and you send as a small company $1 million away, that stopped us. Honestly, last year it stopped us for 3 months.
Did you get a return on that investment?
Absolutely not. No, and that's what's funny is, and I won't really say exactly how much, but if we were able to just take $1 million and put that into steel and hand material and screws and a few employees, we would be in a different spot even today, a much better spot. We had to pause, and so the effectiveness or the effect that government and over-regulations and over-taxation can have on that American dream being possible, it's a real effect.
Yeah, and it's just a truism. No one has ever taxed their way to prosperity. So we've been working really hard, and I'm a fiscal conservative. And when I came into office 3 years ago, we passed, I think, what was a really responsible budget at the state level, where we funded all the essential services, but we didn't grow government. So our budget for 2021 and 2022 grew the state spending less than 1% per year.
Yeah.
And we came into 2023 when our legislature got together, and we had a $2.5 billion surplus. Yeah. So the question is, that's the perfect ingredient for a food fight in the legislature.
Yeah.
But we ended up doing some reasonable things. First, we gave $1 billion back to the people of Montana, both in rebates.
I got it in my property tax with your name on it. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And also then permanent rate reductions.
Yeah.
we still had money left over, so we fixed what was broken. We put $200 million into roads and bridges, and we did it so the feds are going to match that 9-to-1. So we're going to get almost $2 billion into roads and bridges. We fixed behavioral health. We gave our teachers raises. We still had money left over. So we paid off all the state debt. So Montana now is completely debt-free.
That's awesome.
And that puts us in a better place. I just wish the feds would take a page out of our book, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah. No, and I'll say, a company like ours, I am very proud of the fact that, we, with only just being a few years old, and last year we did this, actually the beginning of the year, with only a 2-year-old company then, and still with all these growth aspirations, all these things that we could be selfish in, we offer 401k match, health insurance, dental, life insurance, a high paying wage, honestly, we offer them unlimited overtime. So if you're a motivated employee, you want to work, come work. Cause I would want a company to treat my children. I feel like I should treat our employees as another company I would want to treat my kid. If they're 19 years old, they're trying to start out, property. I don't know how a kid in Western Montana is going to graduate high school here and buy property. It's a challenge. And it's not something that, I don't think it's something that the government can do anything about. The free market is going to have to work it out. The only way that those people are going to be able to afford to buy property and build homes is to have good jobs available.
Yep.
And so we're going to need to attract businesses, and we're going to need to incentivize business, to have higher wages and provide benefits, to help those kids be able to buy homes.
But it's just good business to take care of your employees, because the labor marketplace is fiercely competitive, and you want the best people because that's your competitive advantage. And I think that's just good business. It's like the company we just recruited, German company, we just recruited them to Lewistown, which is what a cool town, but not a lot of jobs. I mean, they've been exporting, like most of Montana, they've been exporting beef, grain, and our kids.
Right.
So we recruited this German firm, Wacom. They're in the advanced manufacturing space. But they're going to invest $90 million there, create 500 jobs, and they're building childcare for all their employees. They're building a cafeteria, just like you have, a lunchroom and archery range outside. You're appealing to the people that you want to have work here. And and as a result, they're more motivated, they work harder, they're more loyal. And they can pursue their version of the American dream as well because they got a good wage.
Yeah. And I think the culture of a business is important, and like an archery range outside, it's a small thing, right? But how many businesses can the employees go out at lunch break, take a break, stretch their legs, and shoot 10 or 12 arrows with their employees that now become, or with their coworkers that now become friends. And then those guys go hunt on the weekend together. And what you end up creating is this tight-knit culture that people are actually happy to come to work here. They're excited to come to work. And I don't have any doubt that, like, at times it's a job, right? People are going to come, they're going to have their down days, and they're not going to want to get out of bed. And we grind, we grind hard, we push hard, but they can be proud of the work. And I tell them that when you go home at night, you're making something that someone's going to give to their son, their grandson, their granddaughter, their mom, their dad, that is going to be a generational item. If you walk into Target today and you look around, everything you see is made to throw away. That's the society we live in. It's a throwaway world, and we're manufacturing something that is going to be passed down for generations. When you make that knife and you're an employee putting that thing together, have pride in that could become something that's the only thing they have left from their great grandfather in 100 years. That's something to be proud of.
Yeah. I think one of the best things you've done is that you have a black lab greeting people coming to the front door.
Ellie's pretty sweet.
Yeah, and she has a stick in her mouth.
Speaking of Lewistown, she loves going east out there bird hunting. That's for sure.
Yeah. So how about SHOT Show?
Yeah, that was cool. I was it's just funny. I randomly ran into you there, and I saw you had a bunch of businesses, Montana business. You had a breakfast. I'm sorry, I actually didn't make it to it, but I had a meeting.
Yeah, we had a breakfast for all the Montana manufacturers that are there, and over 24 Montana gun and ammunition manufacturers were there.
I have to say, to interrupt you, it is cool running into, your own governor at SHOT Show, because not every governor, not every senator, politician is created equal in this country. And there were some other politicians from other places at that SHOT Show, but there was a little sense of pride of me to my governor's at SHOT Show. That means something. Cool.
It's such an important part of our industry here. We have, in Montana, we have 150 firearms and ammunition manufacturers. That's more per capita than any other state in the country.
Yeah.
And we're recruiting more. I mentioned Brickstell Defense. They're going into Glendive. They're going to be the largest employer. There were 350 people. We just announced that 2 weeks ago. And
that's an awesome thing for that area.
And then Olympus Arms is investing $50 million in Helena. They make this awesome AR style rifle, except it was voted best to the SHOT Show last year. The barrel recoils 5.5 inches.
Oh wow!
So it normally they make their primary caliber is a .308. It's a military carbine. Normally I think it would kick like a mule. They took me out to the range 2 weeks ago and we cut the ribbon on their new factory.
Oh cool!
And let me shoot 30 or 40 rounds. And while you're aiming the thing, even though it's a .308 and you're pulling the trigger, there's so little recoil, you can keep the scope on the target the entire time.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
So this was invented by a Montanan, Mike Marino, and he was making them one at a time. Now he's making 100 at a pop.
Yeah.
And it's pretty exciting. And again, we've got 150 firearms and ammunition manufacturers. We were down at SHOT Show. It was really a business attraction opportunity for us because there's still gun and ammunition manufacturers trapped in states that don't embrace the Second Amendment the way Montana does.
Yep.
And that's a huge opportunity for us to bring more of this advanced manufacturing and jobs, and it's consistent with our way of life. And it's just a good opportunity for Montana.
And there again, with manufacturing, whether it's knives or guns, ammunition, manufacturing isn't just the jobs it creates in its own building. Machine shops around those manufacturing. We have machine shops doing work for equipment that's going to be being mounted in our CNC machines. So you're hiring outside shops. There's ancillary businesses around those businesses that don't get counted in the job count. These manufacturing businesses are so important. They're environmentally clean. They take care of their employees, and they're sustainable for the long range. Like Proof Rifles, if you look at the success of Proof, and a lot of people think it's a rifle company, which it is, but they're also making stuff that gets mounted to the space shuttle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an aerospace program.
Yeah. The other thing that's true about this sector is that the bulk of their product is shipped out of state.
Yep.
And we love vibrant main streets with coffee shops and pizzerias and restaurants, and that's great. But they tend to recirculate local dollars.
Yeah.
A company like Montana Knife Company or Proof or Brickstell or Vacom, the bulk of their product is shipped out of state. What comes in is the revenue.
Right.
And what it does is economists tell us that when you bring another dollar into a community, it tends to bounce around 5 to 7 times before it lands. And that's what's making those restaurants more viable, the pizzerias, the coffee shops. It's what's allowing your employees to buy homes. I mean, it's just a virtuous thing. And in the process, we're increasing the size of the economic pie in Montana, and everybody gets a bigger slice.
Yeah. No, and I'm so glad you said that. We've hired 52 people in the last 18 months or to 2 years. And those dollars they do bounce around. Those people spread on the weekends, and these kids, frankly, most of our employees are under 30 years old. They go spend their money. I mean, I do preach to them a little bit like, please save some money. But you're right, those dollars do bounce around, and 95% of our revenue comes from out of state. Mm-hmm. But it's all coming into this state, and then it's being spread around, like you said. And I think that's something that a lot of people just don't understand. That's where manufacturing, again, it just wins, and over and over and over, it's a win for the state. So you're in election time, right? Mm-hmm. You're coming up, you're on the ballot again this fall. What are your big kind of initiatives or pushes for, going into your next term? What do you want to accomplish in your next term?
Yeah. So I ran on 2 really simple concepts: more good paying jobs so we don't have to export our kids and grandkids. And secondly, protect our way of life.
Yeah.
And so nothing's different about the agenda. We've made great progress. I mean, we got the economy going. Prior to me coming into office, in 50 years prior to me being in office, we only had unemployment at 3% in 3 months out of 50 years. Since I've been in office, because of the tax reductions we did, because of the regulatory relief, we've had 24 consecutive months at 3% or lower in unemployment. So it's working.
Sure.
I played football in high school, and I always use football analogies, but I believe football games are won with 3 to 5 yard plays. So what are you going to see next time? No surprise, taxes are going to be lower again. What we're doing as our economy heats up, we're going to fund essential services, but we use any structural surplus that we have to buy down rates. Right. One of the biggest things for manufacturers was our increase in the exemption on business equipment tax.
Yep.
This is it's a sales tax that Montana charges every business, every farmer, every rancher, on every construction company, on every backhoe. It's an annual sales tax on business equipment. You pay it on everything you got down in the shop downstairs. When I came into office, the exemption, the portion that you didn't have to pay it on, was $100,000. In 2 sessions, we've raised that exemption to $1 million.
Yeah.
And in the process, we've taken 5,000 small businesses in Montana off the business equipment tax rolls entirely.
Right.
But as businesses start to get scale, like Montana Knife Company, you buy more equipment and you start hitting that again. So my goal would be to raise that exemption even higher. Right. And the goal would be to get every Montana small business off that, because it's a disincentive to invest back in the business. I'd rather have you putting money into salaries than paying the government for the honor of owning equipment. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it's already such a huge burden to buy, equipment these days. I grew up in the excavation business in Lincoln. My parents own an excavation business that I've been there for 40 years, and buying a backhoe, buying a dump truck, an excavator, the prices on all of that equipment have just skyrocketed. So it's already a huge burden. But that piece of equipment is going to turn around in that community and help that community for years and years create jobs. And it's funny you say $100,000. It's crazy because that used to be a lot of money, and it still is for an individual. But that pays for a half of one of our CNC machines, and we just bought 4. But those machines are going to turn around and produce revenue and create more jobs for decades. Those machines will run on our floor for decades.
Yeah. And I'd say the second thing is then protecting the Montana way of life. And I'm proud of what we've done so far. We made Montana a constitutional carry state. We passed a law that says Montana law enforcement does not have to enforce unconstitutional federal gun restrictions. We've using some of the Pittman-Robertson money that we've gotten for conservation, we've increased access to our public lands. One project we did up in the Big Snowies, we expanded access to 100,000 acres in national forest that had no access previously unless you were willing to hike 20 miles over the top of the ridge. So we're going to continue to do that. We've mapped every river in the state and identified access deserts, and we're targeting either easement acquisition or small land acquisitions to put boat ramps and campgrounds on every navigable river in the state. And it's going to, we've made a lot of progress, but there's still rocks in the rock pile. So,
that might sound like a small thing, but I don't actually want to gloss over that. You and I have never discussed this, but we work hard here. It's Thursday, Friday night, it's July, and I have 4 young kids, they're not young anymore. They're in high school, but this whole time of them growing up, and we decide, let's head to the river, let's go camping, let's go to the lake. And, because of the tourism in Montana, because of the beauty and the draw for our state, there's a few different times we've gone to try to go camping, and we end up in my parents' driveway in Lincoln. You can't find a camp spot. That is something that I absolutely support, is the state using some dollars to provide access for, unfortunately too, a lot of these kids have to grow up in an apartment, or they live in town and maybe don't have access to get out. My kids, they can kind of walk to the river from right where we're at, but that's a rarity. We need to be able to provide that outdoor touch where a kid can go camp with their family and car camp, or, you know, the local Montanans can go find a spot, you know, in addition to the out-of-staters as well. And then the access to the river, the fishing, all that kind of stuff. You come back to the office on Monday after spending a weekend in the woods, you're just a
better place.
You're a better place mentally, physically.
Yeah, and my wife and I love to get out. I mean, we float a lot of the rivers. So last year we floated the North Fork of the Flathead all the way from the Canadian border back down, almost
amazing.
to Kalispell.
Yeah.
And, you know, we didn't see anybody for 3 days. I mean, virtually anybody.
What does the state, you know, we're obviously in this outdoor industry. What part does the state, or do you guys have, and maybe it's probably nothing, but like in regards to like the grizzly bear issues and the wolf issues and some of those, and I understand our fish, wildlife, and parks, quite frankly, and I argue this all the time when I travel, that they're trying their best. I mean, they keep running into activist judges and, you know, environmental groups, but, you know, what part can you play, or do you guys play at all in some of the management of those issues?
I get to appoint the Fish and Wildlife Commission members, and now all of them I've appointed. They have a tough job.
Yeah.
And because, you know, when I came into office, we had a lot of conflict between landowners, sportsmen, and the outfitters and the conservation community. And honestly, something really historic happened during this session in 2023. We brought conservation groups to the table. We brought landowners to the table. We brought the outfitters to the table. We brought sportsmen to the table. And we came up with a package of bills that passed the legislature, and I signed into law. I'll give you one example. We have a great program. My view is we ought to be doing everything we can to increase access to lands. A lot of our lands are privately held.
Yep.
So how do you do that? Well, we're not going to confiscate private property rights because that would be illegal and not right.
Right.
But we should have programs that encourage private property owners to allow, on a voluntary basis, public access.
Yep.
That program for the state is called block management.
It's the best program in America for outdoorsmen.
Well, I think it could get better. But so what we did a couple of things. One is the amount of money that could go to a landowner was capped. And this discouraged some very large landowners from opening up their property because it just wasn't worth the hassle. So we doubled the cap from $25,000 to $50,000. Now, they only get paid for people that actually come on their property.
Right.
But if somebody has a large tract of land and they're willing to allow access, why wouldn't we compensate them for it? Having an arbitrary cap didn't make sense. The other thing we hope to do, we haven't announced this yet, so I'll announce it here on your podcast.
Yeah, awesome.
But we run block management kind of like with a stone tablet and a chisel. You know, it's you got to sign in the box. Yep. And, you know, if you've driven 3 hours to go hunt some birds in central Montana and you show up and the box isn't there,
right,
or it's already full for that day, that's kind of frustrating.
Right.
So complementing what we currently have, we're looking at, can we do some kind of online reservation system? So you could go on and say, I want to hunt birds, what's available in this county or in this area of the state, and say, yeah, I'll be there next Tuesday, and sign up online. Then when you get there, instead of, you know, in dark 30 with a headlamp trying to figure out how to fill out the paperwork and there's no pencil, you're already signed in, you just go.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the block management program, and I have to say, like, personally, thank you to the farmers and ranchers that sign up for that stuff, because they don't have to do it. They are putting a lot of trust in us as outdoorsmen to take care of their land and to treat it respectfully. And it's not the norm, and that's where a lot of Montanans. I grew up just, you know, basically naive to the fact that I just thought this is the way it worked everywhere. And then you go to Texas and you realize, oh, it's 99% private, and you have to pay a lease to get on any of it.
Well, we have good rules, like our, you know, in Colorado, if you fish a stream, you can't put a foot out of the boat,
right?
Because the stream bed is owned by the private property owner.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah, the fact that you can walk the high water mark.
You're going down this river. Here's this beautiful riffle. You want to get out and fish it,
right?
And you can't.
Right.
In Montana, you can, but not in Colorado.
Right. No, and it's an amazing thing to be able. You see people all the time. I have a fly fishing raft, and I can pull over with my kids and have a sandwich, and It doesn't matter how wealthy the property owner is or how many gates they have, as long as you're staying in that high water mark and you're being respectful of the land.
Yeah, we raised our kids floating the Yellowstone. We'd put in someplace in Paradise Valley, pull out at Columbus.
Yeah.
After 4 days of camping on the islands, and it's awesome. I mean,
it's phenomenal. And that block management program, the public lands in Montana, the access, it makes this place incredibly special.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I absolutely believe. I believe no matter what your political persuasion, no matter what your affiliations are, that as Montanans we have more in common that separates us.
Yeah,
and if we can get people around a table, landowners, outfitters, sportsmen, conservationists, if they come in good faith and we focus on the things we have in common, we can get a lot done. Yeah. And that's what happened last legislative session. This block management's one example, but there were a number of other victories that had never occurred before. You put people behind a keyboard when they can't see somebody in the eye,
right?
And they turn ferocious and nasty. Yeah. And this is why Susan and I, the First Lady, we entertain almost every night we're in Helena. I had 40-some people at the house last night for dinner. I have another 40 people coming tonight. Last week we had all the bankers. Tonight it's the FWP folks. And there's no agenda except break bread together, get to know each other.
Yeah.
So that we don't suspect the worst.
Yeah. And I said that I sat in on a veteran suicide panel down at SHOT Show that Tim Kennedy and some people, Sarah Verarda through the Independence Fund put on down there. And that was the big takeaway was getting people back together. And actually, like, if, even in that space, one way to actually see the signs of that kind of stuff is to be together. And we think we're actually connected with social media. And in a way, we're more connected now than we've ever been. I can communicate with people all over the globe. And when I was a kid making knives, I had to write letters to Europe to customers.
And some of it's true.
And some of it's, And then the other side of it is we're actually less connected than we've ever been. I go to a Frenchtown Bronx basketball game to watch the girls basketball. In the 1970s and 80s and 90s, you'd go to the, Jordan, Montana, or you go to Glendive, you go to a basketball game, the place is packed because that was the event in the community. And that's when you got to see your neighbors and you're checking in on everybody, the community, center, the church, basketball game, events like that. That was the real connection. And that was when people, stood around, talked, and agreed to disagree. And like you said, there was that human part of it. But you silo yourselves into keyboards and behind a screen, and you're literally fighting over topics with a person that might live across the street from you. I agree wholeheartedly. We as citizens just want to see the government officials get together in a room and work together and bring lots of voices into the room, hopefully voices that can be reasonable and respectful of both sides and get shit done.
Yeah, and I'll say that I spent 3.5 years in Washington in Congress, and it was like shirts and skins all the time. I mean, it was bad. Montanans can be proud. We have a legislature. I believe last session, something like 2/3 of the bills that made it to my desk had bipartisan support.
That's great.
And I think as Montanans, we can be proud of that because as Montanans, we have more in common than separates us.
Yeah.
And if we focus on what we have in common rather than what separates us, there's a lot more forward progress we can make.
I love it. Well, I know you got other stuff to get to. Do you got anything else you want to cover? Any places you're going to be?
How was your hunting season?
It was amazing. My only regret was I didn't hunt Montana enough with my kids, and that's why I said next year. This year I took some other people hunting. I had a lot of trips. But I have a very finite, small amount of time left with my kids. So this year, I'm going to be back out on that block management stuff. My favorite hunts, honestly, are heading out past Lewistown into that Jordan country, the Missouri River breaks, block management, pick a spot with lots of dots on the map, on an Onyx map, and go mule deer hunt, And mostly the reason for that is hunting forces you to get out into areas of the state that you don't otherwise see when you're just doing, and that's, being governor, I think that's probably got to be one of the best parts is you're visiting communities and places that you just don't go in your normal travel. And when you're out hunting, you meet those farmers and ranchers and
I get to every county every year, all 56 counties. And I'll start that up again in April this year, and I'd love. It's the best part of the job.
Yeah.
And, it's just people say, "Well, what's your favorite part of the state?" It's like all of it. Why would you have to pick something?
It is amazing.
And so and the other thing I think is just awesome, especially for those people listening that aren't here in Montana. We get to hunt big game 11 out of 12 months. If you're willing to switch species and weapons, you can hunt big game 11 out of 12 months. So it's almost, incorrect to say, how was your hunting season? Because it's never over.
Right.
And the 1 month you can't hunt, which is July.
You hunt big fish.
Fish is pretty good. Fish is pretty good.
Yeah. No, it's an incredible state. It's a sportsman's paradise. I appreciate that you're someone who appreciates that part of it, the sportsman's part. You mentioned the Pittman-Robertson Act. It's sportsmen and their dollars that really drive conservation efforts and trail clearing and access issues, and even conservation groups like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and what they do.
And their slogan is "Hunting is conservation."
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yep.
And you look back, at wildlife policy, particularly in African countries where they've taken different approaches.
Yeah.
The ones that have fostered a science-based hunting ethic have much more vibrant populations. There's an industry. People's livelihoods are tied to it. Yep. And ones that haven't have seen near extinction of wildlife. And we have a lot to be proud of in the conservation that's going on here in the state, and we need to continue to embrace that and support it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Well,
That's why we don't need bureaucrats in Washington telling us how to manage our wildlife.
I agree. I was actually just on the phone with Senator Daines the other day. He was we were chatting about a few things. What a great guy. I think we have, Montana has sent some really good representatives out there, and I feel like we have really good people looking out for our state. So I really appreciate you coming by. Appreciate the support.
Thank you, Josh.
I appreciate last time you were here, you were like, I just promised to stay out of your guys' way. We appreciate that.
Well, I hope you have a very prosperous year.
All right. Thank you, Governor.
Thanks, Josh.